Mr. Thompson here. We're looking at U.S. History Standard 9, evaluate the key events, ideas, and individuals related to the Civil War. In particular, we're looking at Part D of that standard, explain the importance of Fort Sumter, Antietam, Vicksburg, Gettysburg, and Atlanta, as well as the impact of geography on those battles. The Battle of Fort Sumter was fought in April 1861. Guarding the mouth of the Charleston Harbor, Fort Sumter was one of the last forts that remained under federal control, so Union control, within the states that seceded. Because the South controlled the harbor, the Union fort was cut off from receiving supplies and food from the North, from the Union. Lincoln had just taken office a few months earlier, and the fort was quickly running out of food and supplies. Lincoln contacted the South Carolina leadership and told them that the U.S., so the Union, would be sending food and only food to Fort Sumter. So a critical decision was to be made. The Confederates, were they going to allow this fort to remain under Union control, or would they begin the fight and attack? Confederate forces bombed the fort, and since this was federal property, they committed an act of open rebellion. To uphold the Constitution, Lincoln believed he had no choice but to call for troops to respond against the Confederacy. Thus, the Civil War began. The Confederates won the Battle of Fort Sumter after 2 days of relentless bombing of the fort from the Charleston shoreline. Not only did Fort Sumter start the war, but it also prompted states from the Upper South to join the Confederacy. Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas, shortly after the victory at Fort Sumter, joined the Confederacy, so seceded, left the Union. The Battle of Antietam was fought in September 1862. Confederate General Robert E. Lee marched his troops to Antietam Creek, Maryland, where he fought the war's first major battle on Union soil. Maryland was a border state, which meant it allowed slavery but remained loyal to the Union. The state was geographically important because it was a border state. The Confederate forces believed that if the war pushed into Maryland, then the state would join the Confederacy. The Confederacy also hoped that a victory in a Union state would encourage European nations to join in this desperately needed alliance with the South. The outcome of Antietam was not what the Confederates had anticipated. There was not a significant Confederate following in Maryland to supplement the attack. It was instead the deadliest one-day battle in American history with over 26,000 casualties. It was also surprising that neither side secured a victory. As Lee withdrew to the south, Union forces might have been able to end the entire war had they pursued the Confederates. However, Union forces did not follow Lee, even though they outnumbered the Confederates 2-1. The significance of the Battle of Antietam was that Lee's failure to win encouraged Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. The Battle of Gettysburg was fought in July 1863. Confederate General Robert E. Lee hoped once again that an invasion of Union territory would significantly weaken Northern support for the war. Lee's army was met by Union troops at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Approximately 51,000 soldiers were killed during the 3-day battle. It was the deadliest battle of the Civil War. So Antietam, deadliest 1-day battle. Gettysburg, deadliest battle. Geography played a key role in the outcome of the battle. The small town of Gettysburg is surrounded by steep hills and rugged terrain. Once the Union forces secured the high ground, it was very difficult for the Confederates to overpower them due to their fortified location. After 3 days of fighting, the Confederates retreated in defeat. Gettysburg marked the beginning of the end for the Confederate forces in the East. Lee gave up any further attempts to invade Union territory. 4 months later, Lincoln delivered his Gettysburg address at the dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery. The geographic position of Gettysburg, being in the northern state of Pennsylvania, and the rugged landscape were key components of the battle there. The Battle of Vicksburg was fought over a span of 2 months, from May through July 1863. Union General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg, Mississippi, because whoever controlled the high ground there on the bend in the Mississippi River would then control traffic on the whole river. Grant, aided by naval actions along the mouth of the Mississippi River during this 7-week siege, achieved one of the Union's main strategic goals in the West. Because the Union now controlled the Mississippi River, Confederate troops and supplies from Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas were cut off from the east. This Union victory at Vicksburg, combined with the Union victory at Gettysburg, was the turning point of the war. The geographic significance of the Battle of Vicksburg is the proximity of the town to the logistically critical Mississippi River. The side that controlled the Mississippi River had an incredible advantage in terms of transporting goods and soldiers. The Confederate loss of Vicksburg also meant they lost the control of the Mississippi River and the ability to maneuver, so move their troops and supplies efficiently. The Battle of Atlanta was fought from July through September 1864. Union General William Sherman attacked the city of Atlanta, Georgia, for 6 weeks before capturing this vitally important Confederate center for manufacturing and railway traffic. Geography made Atlanta a key location for the Confederate operation. The city had emerged as a transportation hub due to it being below the Appalachian Mountains and above the coastal plain. Atlanta, at the time of the Civil War, was one of the few locations in the South that had a significant number of railroad lines and industry. Sherman's goal was to disrupt the Confederacy's ability to resupply its troops throughout the South. Therefore, Atlanta was his prime target. Union troops burned Atlanta to the ground and then marched across Georgia to the Atlantic Ocean and on through the Carolinas. During the march to the sea, Sherman and his men destroyed the roads, railways, and bridges along their path. The Union force also destroyed the crops and the livestock that they didn't eat for themselves. One result of this campaign that devastated the South was that the Confederates recognized that they were going to lose the war, while the North realized they were going to win. Lincoln easily won the re-election in 1864 against a candidate that wanted a truce with the Confederacy instead of pursuing a victory that was close at hand.